What's going on, Vikings fans? Welcome into the show. My name is Patrick Siepman, and happy April Fool's Day to all of you guys. Hopefully you guys aren't getting got on Twitter or X today, as there's a lot of mumbo-jumbo out there. But coming up on today's show, we're going to talk about the 2025 NFL Draft as GM Kwesi Adofo-Mensah pretty much revealed the Vikings draft plans heading into that event late here in April. But before we dive into it, I want to get you guys the Vikings fun fact of the day. So it's actually going to start off with Hall of Fame safety Paul Krause, as he holds the NFL record for interceptions with 81. And I truly believe that's a record that will never be broken. I mean, 81 interceptions. Like, let's just say you play 8 seasons in the NFL and you average 10 picks a year, you're still one short. So I think that is a record very similar to like the Wilt Chamberlain scoring 100 points in an NBA game. I just think that is a record that will truly never be broken. So shout out to Vikings Hall of Famer Paul Krause on this one. But speaking about some all-time greats for the Minnesota Vikings, I want you guys to sound off for me down below in the comments section and let me know, who is your favorite Vikings player of all time? For me personally, I'm 25 years old. The guy I grew up watching and made me fall in love with this football team was Adrian Peterson. Also a guy like Sidney Rice, and then also Harrison Smith, Danielle Hunter, Eric Kendricks. Those are some of my favorites. But you guys let me know, who is your favorite Vikings player of all time? All right, let's talk about it. The GM, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, revealed the Vikings draft plans. He gave a lot of insight in this latest sit-down interview he had, and I just want to dive right into it. So Kwesi started off just talking about the draft plans as a whole, and he said this: "We're just going to be smart, selective, try and find the best players that impact our team, but also knowing how do you best move around the board to get the best total collection of players. That's how we'll approach it. I think we'll have a best available kind of approach and mindset. I'm excited about that. I challenged our group. We have grand ambition, and maybe it'll be the coolest story ever that you went into the draft with 4 picks and you did something great with that." So first off, I love the mindset from Kwesi right there. Pretty much saying like, yeah, we are shorthanded heading into this draft. Like, he has the self-awareness to realize we only have 4 picks. We got to be incredibly impactful with those 4 picks. But why I love the Vikings free agency period so much is it truly allowed you to go BPA at every single pick of this upcoming 2025 NFL draft. Like, if there is a receiver on the board at pick 24 that they absolutely love, I could see them taking him. If there's an offensive guard, a defensive tackle, a cornerback, a safety, even a Mike linebacker, who knows what that player could possibly play. But I think the Vikings, set themselves up very well. Kwesi has the self-awareness to understand that, yes, with only 4 draft picks, we're going to have some home runs in this year's class. And that's why I love them setting themselves up to go BPA this are coming up here in April. But Kwesi also talked about just the draft capital, saying, obviously the capital is something people talk about, but every draft pick has a commensurate value that you kind of break up into lots of picks. If we wanted to pick 15 times, we could. There's a way to do that. So that last part right there, Kwesi saying, if we wanted to pick 15 times, we could. And first off, I don't know how you could possibly pick 15 times if you just trade out of round 1, get like 4 third-round picks, then you trade back there, you get a lot of 6th, 7th-round picks. But, the Vikings are definitely in a spot here where I think they're a prime trade-down candidate from pick number 24. Ideally, you would be able to pick up a 2nd and a 3rd-round pick. I think that would be the money spot for the Minnesota Vikings. I don't know if they would move off this 1st-round pick to get future draft capital. I think they're going to probably want to get more picks for the 2025 draft instead of, favoring the 26 draft. But you really never know what Kwesi has up his sleeve. But I honestly, if I had to put money on it right now, I bet you the Vikings don't make a pick in the 1st round. We will be live here on the channel breaking that down. So make sure you guys are subscribed and tune in then. But if I had to give my best guess, Vikings trade back probably to around pick, 35 to 45. Maybe you pick up an extra 3rd-round pick. But I think as it stands right now, unless they love a prospect that falls to pick 24, I would assume the Vikings trade out of the 1st round, pick up more draft capital, and then just go BPA rounds 2, 3, 5, 6 down the road. But I want to get you guys' thoughts on this. Who is your dream draft target for the Minnesota Vikings? If you guys have a prospect in mind, let me know your thoughts down below. Mine's Kenneth Grant still, or even a guy like Emmanwori. Love both those guys. Even a guy like Derrick Harmon. Even a Walter Nolan, one of these guys, I would be huge fans of the Vikings picking up. You guys let me know, who is your dream draft target for the Vikings this upcoming year? Now, coming up on the show, we're going to dive into my dream Vikings draft targets for rounds 1 and 3. So, we're going to assume the Vikings stick and pick at pick number 24 and pick number 97. So, let's dive into some round 1 draft targets for the Vikings. And number 1 here, we're going to kick it to North Dakota State offensive guard Gray Zabel. Now, this guy, he's the versatile lineman of this year's class. He played tackle at college, but he is probably going to bump inside, play some guard, play some center, can truly play all 5 positions, which, if you look around the NFL right now, how many guys can do that? It's a short list, probably just a handful of guys. But I do think Zabel, he could be a plug-and-play option where it's like, hey, week 1, you're our starting left guard. And if you would roll out this offensive line, I think this would be the kind of final missing piece for this offense, because then Blake Brandel, he can go back to being that swing tackle with Justin School, and then you would have Christian Darrisaw, Gray Zabel, Ryan Kelly, Wolf Rise, Brian O'Neill. I mean, you would have a downhill team, a physical football team with those guys. So I think Gray Zabel, he is slowly moving up my list of dream draft targets for the Vikings. Would still like a guy, like a Derrick Harmon, still would like a guy like Nicky Emmanwori. But if I had to go number 1 here, it might be Gray Zabel, just because I think it would give the Vikings one of the best offensive lines in the National Football League. But we can kick it to Derrick Harmon here, former Michigan State defensive tackle, transferred to Oregon for his senior year, and he was awesome for the Ducks, man. This guy just generates pressure from the interior at a very, very high level. 11 TFLs as well in just 14 games played. Had 5 sacks, 55 pressures, 2 forced fumbles. So he was able to fill up the stat sheet. He can take on blocks very, very well. And the thing I love the most about him is he just opens up lanes for linebackers, especially with having guys like Blake Cashman, Ivan Pace Jr., who are just torpedoes when they're bursting through, that mucky area of the offensive and defensive line. Having that big body, also he'd be able to learn from Hargrave, Jonathan Allen, where he wouldn't have to step in day one and be a high impact player. He can just kind of work on himself behind the scenes, and then when his number is called upon, he could go out there and make some impact plays. But we can stay on defense here and kick it to the secondary. Jahdae Barron. Now, I find it hard to believe he's going to fall to the Vikings at pick 24, but I do think this would be a scenario where if he does fall to pick 24, the Vikings just stick and pick and take the Texas cornerback. Now, this guy, he's extremely versatile, can play inside, can play outside. I think it would be a great scheme fit for Brian Flores and what he likes to do here. And, he had an unreal season for Texas. I mean, in 16 games played, he only allowed 279 yards, had 16 PBUs and 5 interceptions. So the athleticism is there. The production is obviously there. And, obviously we talked about the handshake deal the Vikings could possibly have with Asante Samuel. But if that deal is not on the table, I do believe cornerback number 2 will be a huge need for this team heading into the draft. So even though they're going to approach it BPA, if they don't have that handshake deal done with Asante Samuel, I could see them targeting Jahdae Barron. Now, we can kick it to Nicky Emmanwori, another secondary player here. DK Metcalf playing safety, freak athlete, can play all over the field. The production was there as well. He's got great instincts, and I think this is a guy where Brian Flores is probably pounding the table for Kwesi, Kevin O'Connell to take this man in the first round. He is a freak athlete. I mean, he had a perfect 10 RAS score, a 4.38 40-yard dash, coming in at 6'3", 220 pounds. The athleticism is there. The production is there. And I think Brian Flores, if you wanted to give him any more reason to stay as the Vikings defensive coordinator, drafting a guy like Nicky Emmanwori would do just that. Because you would tell Flo, hey, we're going to get this guy a huge developmental prospect, and we think you could turn him into possibly the next Kyle Hamilton, one of these versatile safeties where they're just impact players. And also this would give you a Harrison Smith replacement, where if he does end up retiring after the season, which I think is more likely than not, I was shocked that he came back. But if you would draft Nicky Emmanwori, there's your replacement for Cameron Bynum. And then even if Josh Metellus would potentially walk down the line, I like the idea of having Theo Jackson, Nicky Emmanwori, and then maybe you go get another safety in next year's NFL draft. But another offensive guard here, Tyler Booker. I will say this. I'm a big fan of Booker, and he's probably going to fall in the draft because of his RES score. But at the Combine, he had this awesome quote where he was like, I make people fall out of love for the game of football. And I love that mentality from an offensive lineman. So we'll see where he ends up going. But him at pick 24, he was J.J. McCarthy's high school teammate when he was playing at IMG his senior year. I know he would be a fan of it. It's just going to come down to if the Vikings really view him as a first-round talent. And if they do think that, then you take him at pick 24. And, that's where I think the Vikings are in a great spot here, where they could have probably 5 guys they love, and they just kind of have to choose who they think's going to be the best player. And that's a sweet spot to be in here heading into the NFL draft. So we'll get into some round 3 targets here in a second. But first, we have a sweet deal going on right now at chatsports.com/Vikings jersey, where you guys can get a J.J. McCarthy jersey today. It's going to be a hot jersey to wear at US Bank Stadium this season. So if you guys want to check it out, got that link for you guys in the comments and description of today's show. But get your J.J. McCarthy jerseys today, chatsports.com/Vikings jersey. All right, let's dive into some round 3 draft targets for Minnesota here. And we're going to stick with the big fella in the trenches, Deone Walker. Now, this guy's 6'7", 350 pounds, just a force on the interior of the defensive line. And, will his game translate to the next level? We'll have to wait and see, but he is awesome, man. The last 2 years, he's been very, very productive, specifically in that 2023 season. Just ridiculous stuff out of Deone Walker, 55 tackles, 13 TFLs, 7.5 sacks, 51 pressures as well. So clearly the production was there that season. You can just see it in his frame, 6'7", 350 pounds, that he has the ability, hopefully to translate to the NFL level. But what about a little tight end here? And I don't want to rule out tight end for the Vikings, even if they don't trade TJ Hockenson this offseason. So we're going to talk about Gunnar Helm here. Now, Gunnar Helm, he posted a very bad RAS score. Apparently, he was dealing with an ankle injury, but I think he could be a good option. Sure hands, big body. And this is a guy I'm sure the Vikings have circled on their draft board as like, yeah, maybe not next year. He's a high-impact guy, but maybe down the line, he steps in. He takes over for TJ Hockenson. I don't hate that idea in round 3. But also, how about a guy like Kobe Bryant? First off, great name. Shout out to Kobe. Kansas cornerback, very versatile player, can fly around the football field. I think he would be a guy where, again, Brian Flores would be pounding the table. Let me get my hands on him. I could turn him to one of the best corners in the league, very similar to how he probably views a guy like Mekhi Blackman, who's also a 3rd-round pick. But how about a wide receiver here? And a guy I'm a big fan of who could play some slot. He could play outside. Washington State wide receiver Kyle Williams. Now, Chris Sims does wide receiver rankings every single year, and he actually had Kyle Williams as the 2nd-best wide receiver in this year's class. So maybe he could fly up draft boards and go round 2. But if he is there in the 3rd round and the Vikings are picking at that spot, I wouldn't hate taking a flyer on a receiver just to get another weapon next to Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson. But we're going to stick with the hometown kid here. Played his collegiate football at Minnesota, Tyler Cooper. Offensive guard, mauler, love his mentality when he's out there on the football field. Really plays an aggressive brand of football, which is obviously key for these offensive linemen. He's got the swagger, he's got the intensity, and I think maybe he's not a guy who steps in day 1 and starts for the Vikings, but he could definitely battle it out with Blake Brandel to be that starting left guard. But if you guys watched this entire video and made it to the end, hit me with the skull down below in the comments section. Make it look like US Bank Stadium on game day. But we do really appreciate you guys tuning in here. Also, hit me up on Twitter at Pat Siepman, the Twitter handle. Link for that also in the comment section and description of today's show. But we'll see you guys next time. As always, Skol Vikes.